We're awaiting the crucial judgment in President Ramaphosa's urgent application to halt Parliament's Section 89 impeachment inquiry linked to the Phala Phala scandal. A full bench of the Western Cape High Court has reserved judgment with Judge André le Grange, indicating that a ruling is expected by the end of the week in this urgent interim interdict application. The outcome could determine whether or not Parliament proceed with its constitutional oversight role or whether the impeachment process is paused while the President's review of the Section 89 panel report is being heard. Meanwhile, Parliament's Impeachment Committee is preparing to appoint an evidence leader to steer one of the country's most significant constitutional inquiries. What are the legal and political implications if the President wins or loses, and what does this mean for the separation of powers between the courts and Parliament? Joining us to speak on that is Professor Booysen. Prof Booysen, good evening. Thank you Thank you so much for joining. We really do appreciate it. Perhaps to start here, a big contestation in court has been the jurisprudence of separation of power. Some are making the argument that the courts can't instruct Parliament to go about its work, and even if the court did, the High Court that is, it would be going against the constitutional court order that Parliament must get on with the impeachment inquiry, and that, of course, presents a nebulous situation where a lower court would be telling a higher court, or at least setting aside the order of a higher court, which in and of itself could be deemed problematic. What is crystal clear in our democratic theory, the principle of the separation of powers, and how do we practice and understand it in South Africa?
Yes, indeed, Oliver. Those are such fascinating issues and very important issues for politics and for society and the whole dispensation in our country. We know that it is assumed, and more than assumed, it's stated in the Constitution of South Africa, that South Africa is a constitutional state. And that, of course, creates some tension. That is an ambiguous statement that was a serious part of those negotiations for the original constitution, which is still in place. And the notion that separation of powers, stay in your lane, we've heard that a few times in a court argument this week, do not interfere, legislature, court, do not tell the politicians what to do. But simultaneously, and this strengthens the idea of this contestation, we know that political parties, political institutions generally, they accept that idea and the practice of the constitution, of constitutionalism, and the authority of the Concord in South African politics. So many cases are in evidence where local governments, political parties turn to the courts when there are disputes that they cannot resolve themselves. And I think this, again, is affirmation that South Africa is this constitutional state. The Constitutional Court's authority is very widely accepted, and that all kinds of parties, political parties included, turn to the Constitutional Court for rulings on these pivotal matters. So I believe, if my political logic can apply to the Constitutional Court and legalities as well, that there will be affirmation of that there is a coexistence, and that the Constitutional Court and the legal system in general has got that type of authority to make rulings, to say what is to happen. And, for example, everybody, all political parties, also the ones presenting argument in court in the last week, have been accepting the May directive by the Constitutional Court that the Impeachment Committee must do its work, and they have started making the preparatory arrangements. And the Concord, in that very important ruling, had also said, unless and until a court decides differently. So I do not think it is interference in the work of the Parliament and the political parties in Parliament if the higher court then makes that kind of ruling, gives that directive. Of course, all political parties will have the right, I presume, to take the matter further to the Concord or appeal court, the Concord in the final instance, if they do not agree with the arrangements.
Importantly, how seminal will this interim interdict judgment be for President Ramaphosa's future?
I think it is absolutely crucial. It is very ambiguous, but it's also very crucial because there's so much of his credibility that is at stake and is being questioned amidst this spectacle about the dollars in the cart, etc. And we heard his counsel in court this week make a lot about the irreparable harm that his case will suffer if it continues in the impeachment committee in Parliament, or the sensitivity and the embarrassment. I think simultaneously, there should be consideration that it should actually be embarrassing to the president if any further minute passes without him taking the opportunity to reassure people of South Africa, and that would be probably by means of testimony in this committee, of what the actual facts are. Because I think he is relying, again, as in previously we've seen, for example, in the Bosasa Party campaign funding case, there is a reliance on a safe space that court proceedings at the higher level provide, also to a president in this case, that he wouldn't be exposed to the pack of attacks that one sees in parliamentary committees where those parties really, in a way, do their work, but there is no mercy and they go for the nitty-gritty details. And whereas in court argument, should President Ramaphosa's case then for a review, scheduled to be heard in early September, also in the Western Cape High Court, should that be granted, there's much more safety in that space of high-level legal argument. But yes, it is an embarrassment, I believe, to South Africans in general, if there's a president who does not take the opportunity to explain the details.
Yeah, well, we're going to have to leave it there. Prof Booysen, thank you so much for your time. Really do appreciate it. Professor San Booysen, political analyst, talking to us there on the arguments in court this weekend, that urgent interim interdict application President Cyril Ramaphosa brought against the Section 89 impeachment panel work that will be ensuing. In fact, the committee is appointing evidence leaders.